how is the circumference of a circle related to the length of its diameter? Think about this question during the lesson. Fayola recently replaced her front bicycle wheel. How far does the bike travel with each revolution of her new front wheel? The diameter of the wheel is 26 inches. How is one revolution of the wheel related to linear distance? Begin by relating the given information to the parts of a circle. The circumference is the distance around the circle. The diameter is the distance across the circle through the center. The radius is the distance from the outside of the circle to the center. The circumference is related to the diameter by a constant ratio. We use the Greek letter pi to represent this ratio. Pi is the ratio of the circumference c of a circle to its diameter d. Multiply both sides of the equation by d to express the relationship as a formula for the circumference. C equals pi times d. Pi is a decimal number that never repeats or terminates. Its value is 3.14159 and so on without end. Use the circumference formula to calculate the distance around the wheel. Substitute the value for the diameter of the wheel, 26 inches. The circumference is exactly 26 times pi. What is the approximate value of the circumference in inches?
Select your answer.
To approximate the distance, use 3 14/100ths for pi. The distance around the wheel is about 81 64/100ths inches, so the bike travels about this distance with each revolution of the wheel. Now you know how pi relates the circumference and the diameter of a circle. What is the circumference of the rim of a basketball hoop with a radius of 9 inches?
The radius is 9 inches. So multiply the radius by blank to get the diameter. So if the radius is halfway, the other half would also be 9 inches. So we're going to multiply the radius by 2, because 9 times 2 would be the same thing as 9 plus 9. And so we would get 18 inches. Then multiply the diameter by 3 14/100ths, which is an approximation for pi, to get a circumference of about 36 inches. And that's it.
Kyla and Theo got on the Ferris wheel shown. About how high will they be at the top of the Ferris wheel?
So the circumference formula to find the diameter. So C is equal to pi times D, which is diameter. So the circumference is 220. That's what they gave us here. And that's approximately pi, which is 3 14/100ths, times the diameter. We don't know the diameter, that's what we're solving for. So the inverse of multiplying 3 14/100ths times D is dividing it. So we divide by 3 14/100ths on both sides of the equation. And we get 220 divided by 3 14/100ths, which is approximately 70 for the diameter. Another way is to take 22 over 7, and that is a fraction version approximation of pi. So you would take the fraction and multiply it by d, but we have to, again, divide, which is the inverse of multiplying. And so when we divide, we do the reciprocal of that fraction to divide. And so we have 7 over 22 times 220, and you still get the 70 is approximately the answer for diameter. So at the top of the Ferris wheel, Kayla and Thea will be about 70 feet above the ground when it reaches the top.
The larger gear turns twice per second. It causes the smaller gear to turn. How fast does the smaller gear turn per second?
Step 1, apply the circumference formula to find the circumference of the larger gear. So we have the larger gear and smaller gear. Circumference, and then step 2, divide to find the number of full turns the smaller gear makes when the larger gear makes one full turn. So you take the circumferences and divide them, and you get 3. So the smaller gear makes 3 full turns for every full turn of the larger gear. Step 3 is to multiply to find the number of full turns the smaller gear makes in 1 second. So you take the 3 and multiply it by 2, which is the amount of times the larger gear turns in a second, and then you get 6. So the smaller gear will make 6 full turns every second, or per second.
The circle has a circumference of 9 42/100 units. What is the area of the square? Use 3 14/100 for pi. Explain how you found the answer.
The formula for the circumference is equal to pi times d, or diameter. So they tell us the circumference is 9 42/100, and we know pi is approximately 3 14/100 times the diameter. So now we need to find the diameter, because the diameter is this distance here. So if we find the distance there, we know in a square all the sides are the same, so we'll be able to find the area. So now we have to solve for the diameter. So 3 14/100 times d, the inverse of that multiplying would be division. So we're going to divide by 3 14/100 on both sides of the equation. That cancels out. We're left with d. So you would do 9 42/100 divided by 3 14/100, and you get 3. So the diameter, is the distance all the way along, would be 3. However, we want to find the radius, because the radius is halfway. The diameter is all the way across. So we only want to know, let me just change the color for clarity. The purple is what we want to know. We just found the diameter, which is all the way across. So half of 3 is 1 1/2. So if we know 1 1/2, which would be as a decimal 1 1/2, like this, 1 5/10, right? So 1 5/10 times the area of a square is base times height. So 1 5/10 times 1 5/10 is equal to 2 25/100 will be the area of the square.